about equality, or are we talking about opportunity? Right? In a democratic regime, quote unquote, are we talking about equality or opportunity? Or are we talking about something else? The idea is, if we're talking about equality, then we have to recognize some absolutely prima facie grounds for an impossibility of equality. So the first point is, and I'm going to go through this rather quickly, the first point is in feminism. And different feminists say that they recognize, there is a recognition of inequality, but there isn't this arbitrary valuation attributed to inequality. Men and women are, for all aspects, not the same types of people. Right? There is a difference between them. This doesn't mean that they should be treated differently. Right? We're not talking about equality in terms of anything other than a biological distinction. To say that people are equal, and you try to put, and this is important, a lot of people miss this point, right? And to say that people are equal, outside of biologically equal, meaning that we are both representatives of Homo sapiens, right? We're both people, we're both human beings. To try and put equality in a social setting, to talk about equality socially, is a very difficult thing to do, right? The idea might be, I don't want to come out, and I'm just putting theory out there, I'm not necessarily justifying or not. The idea is, though one might, and this is now we're deep, right? Though one might recognize and legitimately acknowledge biological equality, it does not follow that biological equality necessitates social equality. If it does, for a particular context, right, within a particular contextualized case, it becomes the obligation of those who are viewed as being socially disadvantaged to demonstrate social equality. It's unfortunately the case, right? Should it happen, should it not happen is not what I'm interested in on an ethicist. It's that it happened. How we go about demonstrating social equality in any given setting becomes the responsibility not of hegemonized power. Why would hegemonized power want to demonstrate social equality? Right? It becomes those who are members of the heterodox community, right? Members of the community that have been subjugated, that have been oppressed, that have been driven out, that have been driven underground, to facilitate a broader discourse of the emerging transformational sort of trajectory of the heterodox community to, if you will, come to light. There is a sense in which the heterodox community, right, recognizes an inequality. And insofar as there's an inequality, there should be, the argument is that there should be the opportunity for members of the respective communities to understand, to come to know why this group has been disadvantaged, why this group has been forced underground, or what have you. Okay. There's another point, but I want to wait. Since for Al-Farabi, democracy emerges as an association of the free, the idea of an authentic rulership collapses due to the inability to exercise what's important, the warlike virtue. And he doesn't say warlike vice, it's a warlike virtue. Right? Again, there isn't a conceptual political architecture for Al-Farabi that exists in virtue, independent to war. War as means, war as ends. The only way to put it is war as means, and there is virtue in that. There's some degree of virtue in that. Right? In terms of the idea of democracy, the problem, democratically speaking, and now I want to come more in a contemporary setting, is one of freedom and one of equality. So now I'm going to go a little bit deeper, because I think the point should be clear, and it's this. In terms of freedom, we do recognize that we talk about democracy in and given the framework of what's relative, right? Relativized. I'll just put R-E-L. R-E-L. Right? Relativized freedom, right? Relativized freedom. It's a relative understanding of what it is to be free. right? It is a contextual basis of what we mean to be free. When we say we are free, we're not free to do X, obviously, right? Why is it? Because as we know, and this is important, right? Anytime we talk about, and I'm not going to go too much because this will take me off. So in terms of freedom, anytime we talk about rights, there are corresponding duties. And the idea is that these duties manifest in terms of politics, political obligation. And this is precisely why, in a contemporary setting, it seems like I'm off tangent, but I'm not, right? In a political discourse in the United States specifically, we are now, and they're not talking about this issue as much as I'd like them to talk about it. They've been all over the talking points and Olympics discourse and what people have said, but there really hasn't been any substance yet. But the idea is, one of the main issues is going to be about medical health and insurability and all that stuff on a national level, which I wish I would hear more discussion on, more substantive discussion on. And the idea is that there's undeniable right to health, right? So insofar as individual members of the population have a right to health, this right to health necessitates a political obligation. And the question is, what is, in a contemporary setting, the nature of that in the United States? What is in a contemporary setting, the political obligation to meet the individual population's right to health? Some people say that the government should stay out of the business. Some people say the government should be in the business. Some people say there should be economic subsidization. Some people say there should be all privatization and having blah, 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 blah. Right? But the idea is that insofar as we talk about freedom, freedom comes at a cost. That's the point. That's the point. Freedom comes at a cost. What is the cost of freedom? Political obligation is the cost. I can't stress this enough, right? Political obligation is the cost of freedom. It's the cost of doing business. Political obligation manifests in so many ways, too many ways to discuss in this video. It would take me, I could do a whole lecture series just on political obligation. But the cost of freedom, the cost of quote-unquote democracy, is the perpetual, continuous, never-ending, ceaseless political obligation to meet and satisfy the needs and rights of the respective population, right? And some of these needs and some of these rights are competing, right? You have competing desires, you have competing needs, and the political architecture sits above and beyond those respective communities, and the idea is that the cost of freedom is political obligation, obligating the political to act, right? And the idea is, in a sort of a gross way, is that if we, the political architecture, are going to act, then you also have to act. We have to act in accord. And I talked about this, like the first hour of this lecture series, where there was a homogeneous relationship between public opinion and political will, right? Where there's a homogeneity between public opinion and political will, ends are met faster, right? Where there is a heterogeneity between public opinion and political will, those ends are complicated, right? The idea is that we want to have a balance, right? I presented that sort of generalized, but there really needs to be a balance. Political will needs to be tempered by a very, very educated public opinion. Public opinion, and I got to give a shout out to Chomsky for this because he really did do this par excellence. Chomsky's discourse of manufacturing consent becomes a problem here, right? So the idea of consent being manufactured complicates the notion of public opinion, because even the opinion of the public is itself susceptible to construction, right? Even if, however, even if this public opinion is susceptible to construction, you have to recognize that even constructed, this is what Chomsky didn't say, which isn't a knock, he couldn't have said everything, even if, and I'll grant Chomsky all of that, it is the case that public opinion, and it is constructed, it still posits a political obligation. There is absolutely no way to avoid a political obligation, which is the cost of freedom, right? Political obligation is the cost of freedom. And the question is, systemically, at a much deeper level, independent to the construction of public opinion,